In April 1945, deep beneath the ruins of Berlin, one of the most powerful men in the world was hiding underground. The city above him was collapsing. Explosions echoed through the streets, buildings burned, and the sound of approaching enemy forces grew louder with each passing hour. Inside a reinforced concrete bunker, surrounded by a small group of loyal followers, Adolf Hitler waited, not for victory, but for the end. This is the story of his final hours, a story filled with fear, denial, and the final collapse of a regime that once controlled most of Europe. By April 1945, the war was almost over. Allied forces had already entered Germany from the west. From the east, Soviet forces were closing in rapidly. The capital city of Berlin had become the final battlefield. Bombing raids had reduced entire neighborhoods to rubble. Civilians were hiding in basements. Food supplies were running low, and chaos had taken over the streets. Inside the city, resistance was weakening. German forces were exhausted, outnumbered, and running out of resources. But deep underground, the leadership refused to accept reality. The Führerbunker was located beneath the Reich Chancellery in Berlin. It was designed as a last resort shelter, a place where the Nazi leadership could continue operating even under heavy bombardment. The bunker was cold, damp, and isolated from the outside world. It consisted of narrow corridors, small rooms, and reinforced concrete walls. Inside, a small group of officers, secretaries, and guards remained loyal to Hitler. Communication lines still connected them to what was left of the German military, but those connections were slowly breaking. The bunker was becoming a prison. By this point, Adolf Hitler was no longer the confident leader he once appeared to be. Witnesses described him as physically weak. His hands trembled. His posture had changed. He walked slowly and often appeared exhausted. But mentally, he remained in denial. He still believed that Germany could somehow win the war. He issued orders to armies that no longer existed. He demanded counterattacks from forces that were already destroyed. Inside the bunker, reality and illusion began to blur. Even as Soviet troops advanced into Berlin, Hitler continued to plan military operations. He believed that a counterattack could push the enemy back. Orders were sent out to commanders across Germany, but many of those orders were ignored. Some officers knew the war was already lost. Others simply had no troops left to carry out the commands. Still, inside the bunker, maps were spread across tables, positions were marked, and strategies were discussed as if victory were still possible. Those who remained in the bunker faced a difficult reality. Some stayed out of loyalty, others stayed out of fear. Leaving the bunker could mean death, but staying meant witnessing the final collapse of everything they had believed in. Tension filled the air. Conversations became quieter, and the sound of artillery grew louder each day. The outside world was closing in. By the final week of April, Soviet forces had entered Berlin. Street fighting had begun. Every building became a battlefield. Gunfire echoed through the city. Civilians were caught in the chaos. Inside the bunker, the situation became desperate. Reports confirmed that enemy troops were only blocks away. The possibility of escape was disappearing. The end was near. At this point, Adolf Hitler made a decision. He would not leave Berlin. He would not surrender. Instead, he chose to remain in the bunker until the end. He believed that capture would be worse than death. And so, preparations began, quietly, carefully, without any announcement to the outside world. As the situation inside Berlin became hopeless, something unexpected happened inside the bunker. In the early hours of April 29, 1945, Adolf Hitler made a personal decision. After years of war, destruction, and power, he chose to get married. The ceremony was small and quiet.
Only a few close individuals were present. The woman he married was Eva Braun, who had remained loyal to him for years. In that moment, deep underground, surrounded by the collapse of everything he had built, a brief sense of normalcy appeared. But it would not last long. After the ceremony, time inside the bunker moved differently. The outside world was almost gone. Soviet forces were now extremely close. The sound of artillery was constant. Inside, final arrangements were being made. Documents were prepared. Personal belongings were sorted. Orders were given to ensure that nothing important would fall into enemy hands. Hitler spent his final hours speaking with those around him. Some discussions were calm, others were tense. But one thing was clear: there was no plan for survival. On April 30th, 1945, inside a private room in the bunker, Adolf Hitler reached the end of his life. The exact moments inside that room were not witnessed directly, but according to those present in the bunker, the outcome was clear. Shortly after entering the room with Eva Braun, a gunshot was heard. When the door was opened, both were found dead. It marked the end of one of the most powerful and destructive leaders in modern history, a man who had once controlled much of Europe, now gone inside a bunker beneath a ruined city. Following his death, the situation inside the bunker became even more chaotic. Instructions had already been given. The bodies were to be taken outside and burned. This was done quickly, under dangerous conditions as Soviet forces were closing in. Fuel was used to destroy the remains. The goal was to prevent identification by the enemy. Inside the bunker, those who remained had to decide their next move. Some attempted to escape, others stayed behind, but the leadership that once controlled Germany was now gone. Within days, Berlin fell completely. Soviet forces took control of the city. The war in Europe was effectively over. The Third Reich, which had once seemed unstoppable, had collapsed. The bunker, once filled with command and control, was now just an empty underground structure, a silent witness to the final moments of a collapsing regime. Even after the war ended, questions remained. Some people refused to believe that Adolf Hitler had died in the bunker. Rumors began to spread, stories of escape, secret routes, hidden plans. Over the years, these theories continued to appear, but historical evidence and investigations have consistently pointed to the same conclusion. The end happened there, inside the bunker, at the final moment of collapse. The story of Adolf Hitler's last hours is not just about one man. It is about the end of an era, the fall of a powerful regime, and the consequences of decisions that affected millions of lives. Inside the Führerbunker, history reached a turning point. Above ground, the city of Berlin was destroyed, and across Europe, the war that had lasted for years was finally coming to an end. It is a reminder that power does not last forever, and that even the strongest empires can fall. Sometimes the end comes not on the battlefield, but in silence, deep underground, hidden from the world.